My name is Clara Monroe, and I'm 32 years old. I live in a mid-sized city called Oak Ridge, tucked between coastal winds and endless ambition. Life here is fast for most, but for me and my daughter, it's a quiet corner where we've tried to build peace. I'm a freelance graphic designer, raising my 6-year-old daughter, Ava, on my own since my husband passed away in a construction accident 6 years ago. We don't live in a fancy neighborhood or have expensive things, but our home is filled with love, stories, and the scent of warm cocoa on cold nights. For me, that's worth more than anything. It was a typical evening. I sat in our modest apartment, a warm ray of sunset brushing the floor while Ava scribbled away at her math homework. Her tiny brows furrowed in concentration as she stared at a particularly tough problem. "Mom, this one's too hard," she murmured, clearly frustrated. I leaned closer and gently pushed her curls back. "Let's figure it out together, sweetheart," I said softly. "We always do." I didn't know that within moments, our simple life would spiral into a nightmare. The ringtone cut through the stillness, buzzing loudly on the table. I glanced at the screen. Madeline Carter, my younger sister. We hadn't spoken in months. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Madeline and I used to be close. After our parents died in a car crash when I was in college, I became her legal guardian. I put my dreams on hold to raise her, worked part-time jobs, skipped vacations, and paid her college tuition from my savings. I didn't regret it at the time, but somewhere along the way, success changed her. After graduating, she landed a position in a fast-growing corporate firm and quickly climbed the ladder. Within a few years, she was managing high-end mergers, rubbing shoulders with CEOs, and flaunting her wealth on social media like a badge of superiority. The girl I had raised with bedtime stories and peanut butter sandwiches became someone I no longer recognized. I finally answered, keeping my tone polite but guarded. "Madeline." Her voice came through the phone, high-pitched and excited. "Clara, I have incredible news." I braced myself. "I'm getting married," she squealed. "Dylan proposed last night. A 5-carat ring, rooftop dinner. It was perfect." "Congratulations," I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. "Oh, and it won't be just any wedding," she added quickly. "It's going to be huge. Like, magazine feature, national media coverage huge. We've booked the entire Marigold estate, the most exclusive venue in Oak Ridge." I rubbed my forehead. "Of course she had," she continued breathlessly, "and obviously, you and Ava have to be there. Your family. She'll be part of the ceremony." I paused. "Madeline, Ava's not really comfortable in front of large crowds." There was a beat of silence. Then her voice shifted, lighter, but laced with judgment. "Maybe being around ambitious people will inspire you to want more from life, Clara. Don't you want to show Ava what success really looks like?" My stomach twisted. I glanced at Ava, still focused on her math worksheet, blissfully unaware of the sharp words aimed at her future. I forced a tight smile. "We'll think about it." And even as I said it, I felt it deep in my bones. This wasn't going to end well. 2 months later, I found myself in a private suite at the Marigold estate, sitting uncomfortably on a velvet couch with Ava beside me, her tiny hand clutching mine. The room was a temple of wealth, crystal chandeliers, Italian marble floors, towering windows revealing a landscaped oceanfront garden. Everything smelled like roses, luxury perfume, and expensive pressure. Madeline stood at the center of it all like royalty, her platinum blonde hair curled perfectly, her voice sharp as she directed a team of wedding planners from Los Angeles. "Only orchids flown in from Japan," she snapped. "And I want a table set with Hermes napkins, not the ones you brought." I stayed quiet, watching her from the corner. She hadn't asked me how I was doing. She hadn't even said hello to Ava since we arrived. It was like we were props, background extras in her $1 million show. She turned suddenly and looked straight at Ava, her smile fake and tight. "Oh, sweetie," she cooed. "You'll be standing right up front with me. We've got a couture dress for you, blush tulle, Swarovski crystals. The cameras will love you." Ava shrank into my side. "I don't want to," she whispered. Mom, please. I placed a gentle hand on her back. She's shy, Madeline. She's not comfortable being in the spotlight. Madeline's eyes darkened. Her tone dropped. You're making her soft, Clara. Just like you. Always afraid to reach higher. I stayed still. There it was again, the barely concealed disgust. The idea that living simply meant living poorly. Then she said it. She'll grow up to be nothing if you keep raising her like this. I stood up. Come on, Ava. We're leaving. And as we walked out of that overly perfumed room full of million-dollar nonsense, I felt Madeline's cold stare boring into my back. There was something behind her eyes, something unsteady, something dangerous. The morning of the wedding arrived cloaked in unsettling calm, like the sky before a thunderstorm. The Marigold estate buzzed with motion. Chefs in starched whites scurried through polished hallways with trays of hors d'oeuvres. Florists climbed ladders to arrange orchids on towering arches, and event managers whispered into headsets like air traffic controllers. I helped Ava into her soft blue dress in a quiet guest room. Her small fingers tugged nervously at the hem. Mom, I really don't want to be here, she whispered. I crouched down and kissed her forehead. I know, sweetheart. We won't stay long. From down the hallway, a voice snapped like a whip. Where's the Fox crew? I paid for full coverage. I didn't have to look to know it was Madeline. I passed her open bridal suite on the way to the ceremony hall. She stood in front of an ornate mirror, her figure drowned in layers of a custom gown that reportedly cost $500,000. Despite the diamonds and the flawless makeup, she looked off. Pale. Sweating. Her movements erratic. Her fiancé, Dylan, stood stiffly near the door. His mother, Margaret, lingered nearby, clearly uncomfortable. Madeline, calm down, Dylan said gently. It's all going to be fine. No, it's not, she barked, eyes wide. It's all wrong. The lighting's flat. The orchids look cheap. And that champagne is warm, warm. Dylan. She grabbed a glass and downed it like water. Her hands shook. The wedding planners kept moving around her, quiet and careful, like bomb techs tiptoeing around a live wire. Something inside me twisted. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I could feel it in the air. Something wasn't right. As we entered the grand ceremony hall, I held Ava's hand tightly. The space was blindingly beautiful. White orchids hung from the ceiling like clouds, and beyond the glass wall, the ocean shimmered in the distance. Guests filtered in, dressed in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, murmuring softly as camera crews adjusted their angles. We took a seat in the back. Ava shifted uncomfortably in her chair. I leaned down. Don't worry. Just a little longer, okay? But I was wrong. It wasn't going to be a little longer. It was going to be chaos. The ceremony hadn't started yet. Guests milled about, sipping champagne and checking their reflections in polished gold plates. The string quartet played a delicate tune, trying to keep the mood serene. Ava tugged at my hand. I need to sit down, Mom, she whispered, her face pale. I nodded, distracted for a moment by a waiter offering drinks. When I turned back, Ava had wandered just a few steps forward and unknowingly sat in the front row. On Madeline's chair. It had a gold embossed nameplate. I hadn't seen it in time, but Madeline had. Across the room, in her bridal gown and towering heels, she froze. Her eyes locked on Ava like a hawk spotting prey. Her body went rigid. The guests fell silent as they noticed her sudden stillness. Then Madeline moved fast. Her heels struck the marble like gunshots as she stormed across the hall, her veil flying behind her like a warning flag. Get up, she shrieked, her voice slicing through the room. Ava jolted up, panicked. I am sorry, she whimpered, stepping back. But Madeline wasn't interested in an apology. With a roar of fury, she grabbed a heavy glass water jug from the nearby refreshment table and, before anyone could react, she swung. The glass smashed against Ava's head, shattering into hundreds of sharp, glinting pieces. The sound echoed through the hall, followed by a silence, so heavy it crushed the air from my lungs. Then came Ava's scream. Blood streamed down the side of her face as she collapsed, sobbing in agony. Everything around me became a blur of screaming voices, gasps, and the sound of running footsteps. I dropped to my knees beside her, my heart pounding, my vision smeared with tears.
Ava.
Ava, baby, I'm here. Hold on. I pressed my hands to the wound, trembling as her blood soaked through my fingers. She sobbed, trembling. It hurts, Mommy. It hurts. I could barely breathe. And then I heard Madeline's voice, cold and devoid of remorse. That'll teach her. I looked up. She was adjusting her dress like nothing had happened. You monster! I screamed. You hit a child. Behind us, someone shouted, Call the police. The hotel manager had his phone out. His hands were shaking. Madeline snapped her head around. No, don't. It was just an accident. But no one believed her. Dylan, her fiancé, stared at her in horror. What the hell is wrong with you? He said. And then sirens. The ballroom doors flew open. 3 uniformed officers entered, and the air shifted. Madeline Wilson had just crossed a line she could never come back from. The police moved swiftly and without hesitation. Their boots echoed against the marble floor as they approached. One officer's eyes locked on Madeline, still standing near the shattered glass and the blood-stained floor. Madeline Wilson, he asked, his tone clipped. Step away from the child and put your hands where we can see them. Madeline froze. Her painted face twitched. Wait, what?
No.
No, you don't understand. Her voice pitched up in panic. She sat in my chair. My chair. She was disrespectful. That was my moment. The lead officer stepped forward. Ma'am, you're under arrest for aggravated assault on a minor. A collective gasp filled the ballroom. Madeline took a shaky step backward. You can't do this to me. I'm Madeline Wilson. Do you know who I am? I'm on the guest list for the Forbes Gala. We don't care about galas, ma'am, the officer replied flatly. Turn around and place your hands behind your back. I clutched Ava in my arms, her head now wrapped hastily in a white linen napkin by a hotel staff member. She whimpered softly, tears streaking down her cheeks. Dylan stood nearby, his jaw clenched, eyes locked on the woman he once thought he'd marry. Say something, Dylan. Madeline screamed as the officer clicked the handcuffs around her wrists. He stepped back. I already did, he said coldly. We're done. Madeline's scream was pure hysteria. You can't leave me. Clara, please. We're sisters. I stood slowly, covered in my daughter's blood, shaking from adrenaline and fury. I stared her down. No, I said quietly. Not anymore. The officers led her away, her designer heels scraping against the floor, her white gown dragging behind like a ghost of the day that was supposed to be her triumph. Instead, it was her downfall. As the ballroom doors slammed shut behind her, silence fell again. The chaos had passed, but the damage remained. As the sirens faded into the distance, the full weight of what had happened slammed into me. Ava lay limp in my arms, her small face pale, blood still trickling from beneath the makeshift napkin bandage. Her dress, once light blue and frilly, was stained deep red. Paramedics burst into the room moments later, their presence parting the sea of stunned guests. Ma'am, one of them said gently, kneeling beside me. We need to take her now. I nodded frantically. Please just help her. They lifted Ava onto a stretcher with delicate hands, strapping her in securely. I climbed into the ambulance, never letting go of her hand. The doors slammed shut, and the vehicle lurched forward, lights flashing and sirens wailing. Inside, my thoughts were chaos. I couldn't stop hearing the sound of the glass breaking. I couldn't stop seeing Ava's body crumple. I couldn't stop feeling that snap in my chest, the moment when I realized my sister, the girl I once protected and loved, had become a danger to my child. At Oak Ridge General Hospital, we were rushed through intake. Nurses moved swiftly. The emergency physician, a kind older woman named Dr. Fields, examined Ava carefully. A CT scan was ordered immediately. After an hour of tense waiting, Dr. Fields returned. The injury looks worse than it is, she said gently. She has a laceration and some swelling. We did stitches, and she's receiving 4 fluids and medication for the pain. She'll be okay physically, but emotionally this may take time. I sank into the nearest chair, burying my face in my hands. I'm so sorry this happened to her, I whispered. Dr. Fields rested a hand on my shoulder. She's lucky to have a mother like you. That night, I sat beside Ava's hospital bed, watching the rise and fall of her chest. Her head was wrapped in clean white gauze, and 4 drips slowly released fluids into her arm. I didn't sleep. Instead, I watched her, protected her, and I made a promise. Madeline would pay for this, not just for the assault, but for everything she had become. I would make sure she never got the chance to hurt anyone again. The next morning, after ensuring Ava was stable and resting under the care of a trusted pediatric nurse, I left the hospital and headed straight to the Oak Ridge Police Department. I wasn't just Clara, the older sister, anymore. I was Clara, the mother of a victim. The moment I stepped inside the station, I felt the air shift. The officers had already filed an incident report after Madeline's arrest, but I was there to push it further. I formally filed a legal case for aggravated assault on a minor, endangerment, and public violence. And because the attack had taken place in front of over 300 guests and 3 national media outlets, there was no escape for her. Everything had been caught on camera. But what I didn't know, what no one knew, was that Madeline's crime that day was only the beginning of her unraveling. 1 week after her arrest, the police department held a press conference on the courthouse steps. I watched it live from Ava's hospital room. The lead detective flipped open a file folder with grim resolve. During the course of our investigation, we uncovered additional criminal activity connected to Madeline Wilson, he announced. I sat upright, stunned. It turned out that for over a year, Madeline had been hiding more than $50 million in losses at her investment firm. She'd been manipulating stock portfolios, falsifying earnings, and using her clients' money to fund her lavish lifestyle, including her wedding. Even worse, a search of her penthouse turned up large quantities of illegal narcotics, including cocaine and unprescribed medications. Several of her employees testified that she had been paranoid, erratic, and verbally abusive for months. The media went wild. Fall of a socialite. Madeline Wilson's secret life exposed. $1 million wedding ends in blood, handcuffs, and fraud charges. From Forbes favorite to federal felon. And in the middle of it all, there I was, dragged into headlines I never asked for. But I didn't care. Because for the first time in years, the truth was louder than her lies. 3 months later, I found myself inside a cold, quiet courtroom. The air was thick with tension, but I sat tall, holding Ava's small hand in mine. She was stronger now. Her scar was healing, and her fear was softening, but I could still feel the tremble in her fingers as we waited. The doors opened. Madeline entered, shackled and pale. She wore an orange prison jumpsuit, her once glamorous hair tied messily behind her head. The diamonds and designer gowns were gone. Her skin was gaunt, her hands trembling. She looked like a shadow of the woman who once barked orders over imported orchids. She glanced toward me, eyes wide with desperation. Her lawyer stood and gave a weak defense, claiming that Madeline had suffered a psychotic break under intense stress, and that she never meant to hurt Ava. But the judge, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, wasn't buying it. She leaned forward, her voice ringing through the courtroom with calm precision. "Madeline Wilson," she said, "you are hereby sentenced to 12 years in state prison. You will serve a minimum of 8 years without the possibility of parole. You are also ordered to pay full restitution for your financial crimes, and you will undergo mandatory psychiatric evaluation and substance abuse rehabilitation during your incarceration." Gasps echoed around the courtroom. Madeline's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then finally, she spoke, her voice cracking. "Clara, please. I didn't mean to hurt her. I need help. We're sisters. You have to believe me." I stood slowly, facing her one final time. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was finished. "You're no longer my sister," I said evenly.
And I meant it.
As the bailiffs led her away, her scream pierced the air. echoing through the halls like the last breath of a crumbling empire. She was gone. For real, this time. Nearly a year has passed since the trial. I now live in a cozy townhouse in a quieter part of Oak Ridge, one with wide sidewalks and blossoming cherry trees. The walls are painted soft blue, and Ava's drawings hang proudly on the fridge beside grocery lists and silly magnets. Our mornings are calm. I wake early, make oatmeal, and pour a cup of coffee while Ava colors at the kitchen table. Her laughter, free and full, is the sound that rebuilds me every single day. She's stronger now. Her hair has grown back over the scar. Her nightmares come less often. She no longer hesitates when someone walks too quickly toward her. There's healing in the little things. Her confidence, her hugs, her joy when she proudly shows me her 100% on a math test. One morning, I spotted a letter on the counter, another from Madeline. She'd been writing from prison every few weeks. The first letters were filled with rage, accusations, blame, manipulation. But slowly they changed. Her latest was short, scribbled in shaky handwriting across the envelope. Please read this one. I need you to know the truth. I held it for a long time, and then I set it down. I didn't open it, because we had already survived her truth, and we didn't owe her any more space in our lives. Later that afternoon, Ava and I strolled through the weekend farmer's market. She skipped ahead of me, holding a tiny loaf of cinnamon bread and pretending it was a microphone, singing songs she made up on the spot. I watched her with a smile. The sun was warm. The air smelled of lavender and fresh fruit. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. Madeline would spend the next decade behind bars, left to confront the wreckage she'd created. But Ava and I, we were finally free. Free to laugh. Free to heal. Free to live. If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes, please like the video to support the channel. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read each one and appreciate your voice. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a powerful story like this again. Thank you for being here. Your support helps us continue bringing these true-to-life stories to light.